Nate Silver's and these Saliza people, just bites into this glorious show. AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas.
In the relentless spotlight of political discourse, few figures command attention and spark controversy, quite like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a lightning rod, a symbol, and a constant presence in the cultural conversation. But when the sharp, satirical lens of Greg Gutfeld zeroes in, the dynamic shifts entirely. It's no longer just news or opinion. It becomes a strategic comedic assault, a meticulous unpacking of a public figure that aims to expose what Gutfeld sees as the performance behind the policy, the theater beneath the tweets. Get ready to see how Gutfeld transforms political analysis into a spectacle of wit, dissecting the phenomenon known as AOC with a razor's edge.
Where did she grow up again? Westchester?
Westchester.
She represents Queens.
There are
and she
trails
wears
in
plaid, and then she has little ski things with like a 60-pound backpack, like she does that. I have never seen, and she showcases her whole life on social media. You can never see her in private. Everything is on social media.
Greg Gutfeld isn't your typical commentator. He's a connoisseur of the absurd, a collector of contradictions, and a master craftsman of the political roast. When he sets his satirical sights on AOC, he doesn't just offer opinions. He orchestrates a full-blown intellectual demolition, seasoned with sarcasm, dry wit, and an uncanny knack for finding the hilarious truth buried beneath layers of political rhetoric. He sees AOC not just as an opponent of ideas, but as a generous provider of material. She doesn't just hand over contradictions. She practically mails them to his desk with a glittery bow and a note that says, "Use this on national TV." Gutfeld tears through the carefully constructed buzzwords, exposes the logical contortions, and leaves the Twitter-fueled sound bites in a smoldering pile. It's less a policy debate and more a deconstruction, performed one brutal, undeniably funny sentence at a time.
AOC was on 60 Minutes last night. Quite a feat for a newcomer. Must be all her great new ideas.
At the heart of Gutfeld's critique is AOC's public persona. He contrasts the narrative of a working-class champion with a life lived almost entirely in the spotlight of social media. He notes how she showcases her whole existence online, asking, where did she grow up again? Westchester? While representing Queens and the Bronx, he sees her as the embodiment of the political influencer, a bizarre hybrid between a TED Talk aspiration and a constant TikTok trend. She spends time live streaming her skincare routine, crafting the perfect online image in a way that Gutfeld suggests seems to eclipse the grinding work of drafting serious legislation. To him, it's a curated spectacle, always visible, always performing, a stark contrast to the gritty realities faced by many constituents.
People are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
What an expression. Now, the real story isn't AOC's very old ideas. It's the media's gushy view of her. Even with her old ideas, she gets on 60 Minutes. The past is called the future, and you better love it.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon.
This focus on performance extends, in Gutfeld's view, to her intellectual positions and policy proposals. He repeatedly highlights the perceived disconnect between her economics degree, which she brandishes in debates, and her apparent understanding of fundamental concepts like supply and demand. He marvels at how someone who graduated with such credentials seems fundamentally confused about how markets work. Her ideas, he argues, are far from fresh. She gets along with Bernie Sanders because, in Gutfeld's satirical words, she's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore, looking fresh but being as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. Her Green New Deal, often cited as a signature proposal, he ridicules as reading like a 10th grader's extra credit project rewritten during a yoga retreat. It promises utopia, funds it with what he calls unicorn dust, and expects no one to notice the underlying math is shakier than her Instagram filter in bad lighting. It's a plan so devoid of real-world applicability that, according to Gutfeld, even kindergartners playing pretend government might think twice.
Victim status.
Why is it, Greg, that you can't challenge someone to a debate on the ideas without being accused of being a jerk? Like, I don't think Ben Shapiro has ever catcalled in his life.
Well, the thing is, what if a woman had challenged her to a debate? So she's actually being the sexist.
I think Candace Owens did.
Oh, really?
Now
There you go.
She has, like,
because
doubled the money.
So to answer your other question, she had to cloak her weak ideas in the armor of a smear.
But it's the myriad of contradictions that truly animate Gutfeld's satire. He finds rich material in her railing against capitalism while wearing clothes that cost more than a month's rent in the very communities she represents. He points to her talking about injustice while reportedly flying first class to climate conferences. He paints a picture of a woman who enters every debate like it's the season finale of a reality show, where every disagreement is framed as trauma, every policy criticism as oppression, and every lost vote a Greek tragedy rewritten for Instagram Reels. He dissects her performative outrage, her mastery at finding microaggressions in almost anything, her theatrical gasps, and her tendency to accuse others of moral crimes because someone used a word she didn't pre-approve. It's an all-you-can-roast buffet of actions that Gutfeld portrays as prioritizing outward show over internal consistency or actual legislative work.
AOC has never introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life. The reason why she gets along with Bernie is because she's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983.
And then there's what Gutfeld characterizes as AOC's uncanny ability to make everything, absolutely everything, about herself. He describes her as someone who never met a situation she couldn't make about her. He zeroes in on her narrative surrounding the events of January 6th, dismissing her claims of nearly being killed as a tale, expressing sarcastic surprise that she hasn't claimed similar near-death experiences during major historical conflicts like 9/11 or the Tet Offensive. This tendency to center herself in events, even twisting them for dramatic effect, leads Gutfeld to draw a highly controversial comparison, calling her the Amber Heard of D.C. politics. He views her political strategy as ordering the most expensive meal on the menu, insisting everyone else should pay for it, and then storming out when the check arrives, often crossing her wrists behind her back in a faux handcuffed position during protests, a stance he sees as more theater than genuine resistance.
Really doesn't do her job, right? She makes movies, she goes to galas, she sits for glossy butt-kissing interviews in GQ and other women's mags. Once you get over the fact that you're hollow inside, it's not a bad life.
All right, Dana?
Well, I think that I read a little bit of the New York Times review.
Gutfeld paints a picture of a woman who enters every debate.
Gutfeld also casts a critical eye on the dynamics surrounding AOC's public image, particularly what he sees as the media's role. He argues the press acts as a shield, creating fake stories, like the controversy around her dancing video, to smear critics and protect her image. This dynamic, he suggests, allows for a certain brand of ego, a confidence stemming from believing her hot takes are gospel and her gaffes are simply growth opportunities. He highlights her tendency to tweet with the righteousness of a prophet, but delete with the subtlety of a magician, explaining away contradictions as mere evolving thought, which he defines as political code for don't look too hard. Gutfeld sees her as mastering the art of redefining language itself. For AOC, he argues, nothing means what it used to. Borders are optional, logic is offensive, and economics is a matter of emotional interpretation. Wanting secure borders is xenophobia. Questioning trillion-dollar spending is cruelty, and asking basic questions is an attack on her womanhood. It's a word salad, according to Gutfeld, served with a side of moral superiority. He calls this approach activist cosplay, a politics where appearance, hashtags, and clout are the true currency, overshadowing substance and genuine legislative effort.
She gets on 60 Minutes. The past is called the future, and you better love it. Take AOC's delightful dancing video from last week. The media created a fake story that conservatives attacked her over this delightful trifle. Not really. In fact, the only stories written about the dance were by liberals using it to falsely smear the right. So the press creates a shield around her.
These critiques converge in specific moments Gutfeld puts under the microscope. He rolls his eyes with delight at the way AOC weaponizes wardrobe, turning the infamous tax the rich dress into a symbol of political irony. He sees it not just as a slogan, but as performance art stitched in hypocrisy. A congresswoman who built her brand on class struggle, attending an elite gala where the ticket price alone could cover half a college semester, while wearing the message like a bumper sticker with a zipper. He likens it to showing up at a firefighters convention in a Let It Burn t-shirt. He also dissects her uncanny ability to turn any event, no matter how unrelated, a snowstorm, a Supreme Court decision, a banana shortage, into a moment about her brand, converting headlines into monologues about justice, resistance, and occasionally skincare. It's a self-referential loop, a constant stream of content for the cult of personality that he suggests surrounds her, where digital bodyguards swarm social media to defend every gaffe as genius and every contradiction as bravery.
Then crossed her wrists behind her back, again in the faux handcuffed position. It's as tall a tale as AOC nearly being killed on January 6th. This is a person who never met a situation she couldn't make about her. She really is the Amber Heard of DC politics. I'm surprised she didn't claim she was nearly killed on 9/11 or during the Tet Offensive or the Battle of Bunker Hill.
Ultimately, Gutfeld's consistent biting point is that AOC's public life is defined by performance, a meticulously curated spectacle. He argues she spends 5 minutes condemning inequality and the next 5 crafting a post about how the lighting in the Capitol is a metaphor for oppression. It feels less like governance and more like an experimental theater project funded by hashtags. He describes her as dangerously convinced that her worldview is not only correct, but morally superior, an ideology immune to facts simply because it's popular. Gutfeld wraps it all up with his signature grin, the kind that tells you he's not angry, just utterly entertained. Because while AOC may believe she's rewriting history or dismantling the system from within, even while being in Congress, as Gutfeld reminds us, his view is that she's largely just providing commentary on it, narrating her experiences with dramatic flair and very little follow-through.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've done Alexandria every day for the last 6 months. No, but it's true. But so is, I mean, the thing is, she does represent something. She represents kind of like the naive romanticism that you can kind of play along and no one questions.
You mean the poems that you write when you're 15 years old?
But I think that this is a real possibility for her. You know, if she does read and she does actually get up to speed, she could be a challenge. But she hasn't.
Just have some grasp.
In the end, Greg Gutfeld doesn't need to resort to outright malice to dismantle the image of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He simply lifts the mirror, and in his view, the reflection does the rest. The real punchline, the core of his satire, isn't her tweets, her policies, or even her gaffes. It's the perception that she genuinely believes she's changing the world through performance and narration, mistaking engagement metrics for genuine impact. For a satirist, that disconnect isn't a threat. It's the most valuable comedic gift imaginable, a spectacle of modern politics that writes its own jokes and leaves us wondering where the policy ends and the performance truly begins.
Hello, America. So by now you heard that AOC, among others, were arrested last night. She truly is an American hero. It was brutal, taken out in cuffs. Well, technically, her shirt had cuffs. Maybe French cuffs, as she did surrender without fighting.